Welcome back to the video, guys. This is Raising the Dead Small Engine Repair, and today I thought I'd just cover just kind of like tools that I've bought, because I've been in the mechanics industry in general for the past 5-7 years or so, and I just wanted to make a video because I feel like a lot of the videos that are out there on tools that they wish they bought sooner, wish they didn't buy at all, somewhere in between. I just feel like a lot of the videos out there are made by much older mechanics. Maybe I'm just biased. Maybe I just like doing things my way, I guess you could say. But I just wanted to make a video anyway that went over, one, why I wish I bought them sooner or didn't buy them, and two, the improvements I would make or different ways that I would kind of go about it, yada, yada, yada. So might as well start off on what we wish we bought sooner. So I always used hammers that had really poor grip design, and that doesn't mean that you need the snap-on one, but I can 100% recommend finding yourself a hammer that fits your hand really well. I mean, I don't have the biggest hands. Somewhere in the middle, I guess, would be probably the best in order to describe them. But find yourself a hammer. If you like the Mac or the Proto, same ones, or Stanley, but the anti-vibe, I absolutely love those hammers too. I just have this one out here because I've tried the Harbor Freight one, and it just doesn't feel good in the hand for me. It just doesn't work. And because I have a student discount, or had a student discount at the time that I bought it, it just made sense. It just made sense for me, just because I wanted a hammer that I enjoyed using, and it felt comfortable, it didn't hurt my hands, and I'm using it all day. It was just nicer to use. Now, these ones are going to be a little bit more gimmicky, and I know not everybody's got the money that I do to kind of spend on tools or wants to spend on tools, but having an offset ratcheting wrench, having just that little bit of offset there, so that way when you're doing a fastener, that you have the room to get your hand in there in order to, loosen it, tighten it, whatever. Having just that little bit of offset can make that so much nicer, but not having one that's flex head, because then it wobbles all over the place, or you can't get it to sit on the fastener just right. Doesn't have to be the snap-on one, obviously, but those are some things that might be things that affect you, and there are obviously tools out there that can solve that issue. I cannot tell you the amount of times I've hit my knuckles on something, or I just simply can't get a ratcheting wrench in there because of this design or flaw or feature, and I just happen to like the snap-on ones and had a student discount, so that saved me a ton of money, and it was probably about the same price for the Gearwrench or other equivalent at the time. And I guess for our third tool, a quality set of pliers just in general. I was honestly impressed by how much better, in this case the Knipex Cobras, was over just the hand-me-downs from my dad of water pump pliers, or for example just regular needle nose. I really don't even like the Knipex needle nose pliers, honestly. I like the Klein ones way more. So finding yourself a quality set of pliers can improve the quality of life of your mechanics work. I'm not really sure how to explain it. I've put probably 3 or 4 years of use on these, and the teeth are still just as sharp. They've held up extremely well. Maybe speak to an electrician, because they use pliers all the time, but find a set of pliers that is the last set of pliers you're ever going to need to buy, kind of thing. And some of you, that's going to be the snap-on ones, the Knipex, but find yourself a set of pliers that's going to save you a ton of hassle down the road. Now, if you do small engines or gas engines in general, anything that uses a spark plug, getting yourself the set of magnetic swivel head ones that have this little magnetic insert that are made for spark plugs, these have saved me so much time, because they won't drop the spark plug down in the engine. That little bit of pivoting is usually just enough for tight areas. I cannot tell you the amount of times that these have saved me a ton of time. Now, in the case of the set that I bought, I believe this one's a Gearwrench set. Let's see, find the number for you. I'll make sure to have all the numbers and links posted in the description for each of these. But this set in particular came with obviously the 5/8, the 9/16, 13/16, or obviously they have the metric equivalent if you're using metric spark plugs. Actually, I think are these no, these are Astro. I'm sorry, they're not Gearwrench. A lot of companies make the same kind of ones. These won't work on every single spark plug or every single engine design, but I'll just take my word for it. It's 100% worth getting one of them. Now, the next tool is one of these, digital readout circuit testers, or whatever you want to call them. But I love finding ones that have both the digital readout as well as you can exchange out the little wire on the end. Sometimes it's a little hard to do one-handed, but you can change out the wire on the end. And in this case, it's just got a screw-on cap. But you can actually change out lengths or leads or designs or whatever, so that way you can reach the end of your car, the other side of your car. You have just different sizes. It just makes it so nice to be able to use with a test lead kit. And make sure when you get one of these to find one that has the 0 through 50, because some of them will only do 8 to 12 volts. And if you have a wire that's a 5-volt reference, well, you're going to need one that can read 5 volts. And this one's 3 to 49 volts. I believe this is a Mayhew Tools one, but find yourself one with a digital readout. I prefer to find ones with obviously the lights as well, just so I can have a visual and I can actually see what's going on, just like the old school ones do. But finding yourself a good circuit tester just like this one, or any of the other ones out there, so once again, just going to save you a ton of time from having to grab this or grab your multimeter. It's just going to save you time. This is the biggest thing. This whole video is meant to save you time and money, because you don't want to spend money on tools you're not going to use, especially if you're a new mechanic, because that's going to be a tool you don't use for so long, and you can spend that money elsewhere. You can invest it, whatever, doesn't matter. It's meant to save you time and money, and hopefully the next guy gets to have the same advice that I'm giving to you, and you'll be able to add on to that. This is going to be a little bonus for the end, but on to tools I wish I didn't buy, or essentially some equivalent of that. We'll start off with torque wrenches. Honestly, with torque wrenches, do not overspend and get yourself the nice shiny snap-on ones. Even with the student discount, I could have probably bought another 2 Icon or Harbor, just any of the Harbor Freight ones, or Gearwrench, Amazon brands in general. It'd probably be best to stay with a familiar brand, whether that's Craftsman, Icon, but really all you need, and just for simplicity's sake and not having to find batteries or anything like that. I mean, I haven't even had to change out the set of batteries on my Snap-on one yet, but just get yourself a regular click type like these. The ones that have that little pommel on the end with a little knob that you twist and lock in, I cannot stand those. The amount of times they'll come loose and then I have the wrong torque setting, so on and so forth. If you're looking to become a mechanic and get into, whether it be, maybe not so much small engine, because typically in a small engine environment you won't really use these hardly ever. But if you're looking to get into the car mechanic industry, diesel mechanic, which is what I typically do, and I do more small engine on the side. But find yourself a set of reasonably good torque wrenches, preferably click type or whatever your preference is. It doesn't matter if you like split beam or digital, but get yourself a set of torque wrenches that make sense for you. And one of the best ways you can do that is just trying out other people's torque wrenches. Just find the kind that you like and that you're obviously wanting to spend money on. Onto automatic wire strippers. These have saved me a ton of time, but my biggest gripe with automatic wire strippers is as soon as they get to 2 or 3 years old, or any feasible amount of normal wear and tear, just cutting and obviously stripping out wires, they get dull. They just don't cut as good anymore, and they can't handle like coated wire or housing wire, things like that. They just can't do anything above like 5 or not 5 gauge, like 20, 18, 16 gauge wire, because they will get dull so quick. I imagine that's why almost every electrician I've ever met hates automatic wire strippers. They'll save you in a pinch, I'll be honest, and they are honestly worth buying. But the ones that come from Harbor Freight, they just aren't it. They get dull way too quick. So if anyone happens to know of an automatic wire stripper they've owned for years and years and is still just as sharp as the day they bought it, I would absolutely love to buy it. But I can honestly say it's a pass on at least the Quinn, and I also own, of course, the other, pistol grip style, Pittsburgh version, and I'm gonna just pass on these because they just don't last, I guess is kind of my issue. I almost always end up just going back for the usual wire strippers and just stripping them the normal way. Maybe that's just because I do a ton of wiring, but it's just kind of a gripe for me. Alrighty, on to ratchets. I cannot overstate this enough. Overspending on ratchets is just the biggest waste of money ever. I've had, for example, I've had this Icon stubby ratchet. I've used Gearwrench. I've used Tecton. I've used a lot of brands of ratchets, and I just don't have problems with them. I put tons of torque on them. They just don't tend to break, and if they're, the thin head style, I don't put as much torque on them because, well, frankly, they're just not that thick. They're not obviously designed for that, so you don't use it for that. And in this case, these ratchets, you really just don't need to spend $200, $300 a ratchet in order to get a quality ratchet that's going to last you a lifetime. I've had this Gearwrench just as long as this snap-on, probably use it just as much. Obviously you can see the handle. I feel like a lot of times the rubber grip quality just doesn't quite hold up as much as these snap-on ones maybe, but it honestly could have just been the jobs that I've used this one on. It just gets more chowdered up, but you really don't need it. And whether you want to go with hard handle style or chrome handle or soft grip, that's 100% personal preference. You pick which one you want. Just try out, other people's ratchets and figure out if you prefer chrome handle. For me, I prefer on my longer ratchets to have, soft grip or, some variation of that or whatever. But if I have a stubby ratchet, I prefer to have a chrome handle because obviously these handles are thicker. They take up more space. But if I'm using a longer ratchet, usually means I've got more space. If I'm using a short one, it means I've got less space. That's just kind of been my reasoning on the ratchets that I buy. I guess we'll cover power tools next. I'll be honest, I feel like you don't really need to spend the money to get Milwaukee, DeWalt, Makita, Festool, Snap, whatever, top tier brand is out there. Don't get me wrong, absolutely love the Milwaukee tools I've had. The warranty process has been great for me. I really can't find any gripes. I like that they have a longer warranty than most other tool brands here in the United States. If you're outside the United States, I hear they only have like a year warranty in Canada and the same as everybody else. I just wouldn't buy it because fixing Milwaukee tools, if you're not really into fixing them, this isn't really applied to you, but just getting parts for these things can be such a hassle sometimes, especially if it's specialty bearings or the switches. It can just be an absolute hassle. So if I were to go and buy it all again, even though I know it's owned by TTI and so is Ryobi, but I'd probably just buy Ryobi because it's just cheaper. I mean, a drill, I'm not using it all that often as a mechanic, but there are times where it has a lot of work to do. If I'm putting a new deck on a trailer, if I'm, just having to drill out every single oil pan bolt and tap it. There's times where it gets used a lot, but I don't really feel like I've truly gotten my value out of this particular tool. And even with impacts and whatnot, a lot of people, I feel like a lot of times when you see like Torque Test channel, for example, it's great that he's comparing impacts so that you can spend your money and get the tool that gives you the most value. But oftentimes I feel like when I see, a tool that has the most powerful impacts, it's often not worth it if the tool doesn't last, 3, 4, 5 years, especially when it comes at a steep price. So when you're picking out power tools, I hate to say that, buy the one that makes the most sense for you, but I really feel like it doesn't make sense for even like 90% of people, especially if it's just you and you're the mechanic. Maybe business side, it's going to be different. I know there's brands like Hilti that offer a lot of, benefits for businesses, and so there's lots of cases to it. But I'd say just start out on a cheaper brand for power tools. Ryobi, even some of those Craftsman ones, they're just Stanley Black & Decker, obviously, but some of them are just old DeWalt tools. In the case of Ryobi, some of them are just older versions of the Milwaukee tools. But I'd say start out with a cheaper brand, and if you find that it's just not holding up the way you want to, go ahead and drop some money on the new ones, and then you have a home set and you have a work set. But if you've really just got the money for it, maybe it does make sense to go ahead and just buy whatever brand you want. It's going to come down to personal preference. Do you like the batteries to slide in this way, drop down? What do you already have? But all I'm saying is, before you go and drop a ton of money on your power tools, because they are going to be super expensive, there's a lot of factors to consider. Do I actually need this? How's the warranty process in my area? Is the closest, service center going to cost a ton to ship to? There's a lot more factors than, does this tool beat a DeWalt one in terms of speed? There's tons of other factors to it. Longevity, how long is it going to be able to perform the task at a certain level? Is it going to continue to perform well for years to come? There's just more to it than the surface level on power tools. Now, sockets in general, I've only got 2 sockets here just for an example, but I just want to talk a little bit about sockets. Buying yourself just a quality set of regular impacts that have thin walls is all the kinds of sockets you will ever need. I feel like I spent a ton of money on chrome sockets, 1/2 inch and above, that just don't get used. I only ever use, the impacts, because 99% of the time, I really am not space concerned about the thickness of the walls. And the reason why they make these a little thicker is because these are made out of chrome moly or chrome molybdenum. You'll probably see on some of these, I bet it says like CH or CRMO, and that's just chrome moly. It's just a softer material, so that way in the event that it's in an impacting environment, getting hit, when the socket fails, they will not shatter or splinter off. Because if you've ever seen a super old chrome socket, you'll see the chrome peels off like flakes, or they'll crack, they'll break. There's just potential for damage that obviously is going to take a long time to get there. I'm not saying it's going to blow up the first time you use it, but if you're going to get sockets, I just say save yourself the time and, in the long run, probably the money, and get yourself a nice set of thin wall impact sockets, preferably ones with a lifetime warranty, because then you don't have to worry like, oh no, the wall on your sockets is, let's see, what's that? 65 thousandths, of an inch versus 35. And sometimes, especially on like steering wheel nuts, if you have to redo steering wheels or put new ones on or whatever, that's in one place. It just counterweight bolts. So there's so many examples I could go on to, but just save yourself the time and the money, long run money more or less, and get yourself a good set of impact sockets, because they're the only set that you're really going to need and use, and they're going to save yourself a ton of space in your toolbox for more tools. And then you can obviously spend that money on specialty ones, or ones that are actually going to help save you time, rather than just having every kind of socket and flavor that you can get. That's just kind of my little 2 cents on sockets. Now, one thing that I feel like I've kind of overspent on is kind of more niche tools, however you want to say it. I don't actually know the official pronunciation, but in this case, I have an ECT 3000 from Power Probe. It's a great tool if, one, you know how to use it, you do a lot of wiring, you're chasing down shorts on a very regular basis, and they're actually in an accessible position. Because, I'll just show you guys the tool. It's got a couple of drawbacks, I'll be honest. So, number one, you obviously have to have access to a battery source to power your ECT. Number two, you actually have to have access to the wire, or at least the ends of the wire, because it'll trace through wire loom. And you have to obviously be able to pierce the wire and, get a physical connection to it. So that way you can use the short finder and follow along it and actually trace down the short. And I feel like the amount of times that all of those conditions are met in a manner where it would be easier to use this than, just look for the short, or, replace the wire or connect it. I feel like the amount of times where each of those conditions is met and I actually get this tool out have been so few. And this tool costs like $300. I can't even remember. It's been a long time since I've had it forever, and you can see it looks brand new. I hardly use it. And I'll just be honest, until you actually see the tool and it getting used on a frequent basis, don't waste your money on it. Just be patient. And what I mean by be patient is actually wait and observe how often this tool is going to get used. Is this tool actually going to be worth the $300 or $400 you spend on it? It's not like buying an air compressor where, I need to inflate tires and use air tools. It's going to get used on a daily basis. Something like this, it's just not going to get used on a daily basis. So maybe wait till you're 5, 10, 15 years in the road, rather than, 2 years down the road, you see some guy on YouTube using this really fancy tool and it saved him a ton of time, and then you realize that during your regular shop life over the next few years, you just don't use it all that often, because the scenario in which that tool is very useful just doesn't come up all that often. It doesn't mean it's a bad tool or that you use it wrong or whatever. It's just a tool that solves certain problems really well and doesn't solve every problem reasonably well. So that's something to consider whenever you're looking at buying more specialty tools. And I guess sort of as a bonus, these little bit sets and specialty sockets, I will be honest, I've bought a set of triple squares for one Mercedes engine that we used one time. It doesn't even look like I've used them, honestly. And that's it. Specialty sockets and all these little bit sets that come with hundreds of bits, just don't even waste your time or your money on these. Unless you lose these all the time, these little bits, all you're ever really gonna need is this little Irwin set. I've just got a bit out right now, but I've had this set for 5 years. I haven't lost one yet. Maybe I'm just been really good about it. I don't know. But I've got so many of these bits, I just never use them because I rarely ever lose them. So just find yourself a little bit set, and don't buy hundreds of bits trying to find one that fits every single little thing, because a lot of times they'll just sit in your box just like these specialty sockets, and then you're just kind of waiting for the day that you need to use them. Sure, it comes in handy to have them when you do have that oddball where you need a number 2 square drive that's exactly that long, but frankly that just doesn't come up all that often as a mechanic, at least for me. feel free to share your, opinions or comments, or maybe even facts. They could be facts. I don't want to slash or hate on everybody, but maybe it's like if you're a Mercedes tech, and you want to comment down below, say, if you're going to do Mercedes, or, maybe foreign cars more often, maybe it is more worth it to have this sort of set. But I'm a third-party mechanic, and I've been that for a long time. I see everything that comes in that's not one particular, brand or whatever, but I just don't see the need to buy these, especially when, if you have another tech in the shop who just has them, and, maybe I just have a good relationship with a lot of people and they help me out. And honestly, that's probably way more valuable than any tool that you're going to have, is having people that you can go talk to figure out what tools do I actually need, and borrowing tools from people, seeing what their use cases have been, because it's way more valuable for you to listen to them than it is to listen to me, because they're the people actually working in the shop where you're working at, and they know what comes through the door. So honestly, I can only recommend, if I could only recommend one thing, it'd be talking to people where you're going to work, or people that work on the cars that you work on, because they're going to be able to tell you what they need and what they use on a regular basis. I just am a third-party mechanic, and I feel like if you're going to be a third-party mechanic, and whether it's you do your stuff on your own time or whatever, these are just tools and things that I've seen over the past 4 or 5 years or so that could save you guys a lot of money early on, because you just really don't need to spend the money on it. So I hope this video helps out, and take some time to go in the comment section and let people know tools that maybe are in your field you don't use that often, or maybe if it's in your field, for example Mercedes, you use all the time, because this is just an opportunity for everyone to help each other out and figure out what tools they don't need, where they can save their money, where they need to spend more money maybe, and can save themselves more time. So I hope this helps out. Maybe some people, a lot of people, somewhere in between. But I'm doing all this because I've got a place where I want to be in life. And if you're watching this, you've also got a place where you want to be in life. So our goals aren't that different, are they? So let's just help each other get to that point faster and better. And, it's about growing. It's about that potential that everyone has and unlocking that. So hopefully this video will help you achieve that. So thank you all for watching, and get out there and go turn some wrenches.